Yeah, dear students, welcome back to our session. We ended at the point where we were looking at the factors which make a perfect market to be unrealistic. We said one thing is that the number of buyers and sellers cannot always be large. Buyers and sellers can be few. But again, apart from the number of buyers and sellers being few, another thing that may make a perfect market to be unrealistic is imperfect knowledge of the market situation. Imperfect knowledge of the market situation. That the buyers are always not aware of the prices, quantities, and qualities of the commodities which are being bought and sold, which call for a need to advertise. Another factor which makes a perfect market to be unrealistic is existence of transport costs. We said that in a perfect market, there are no transport costs. No way that one can produce maize in one region and transport them to another region at no cost. But in a perfect market, we say that in this market structure, there are no transport costs. Another factor which makes a perfect market to be unrealistic is that commodities are not homogeneous. Firms, producers produce goods which are differentiated. Firms produce commodities which are differentiated. Again, there is preferential treatment due to the same factor that since firms produce commodities which are differentiated, consumers may prefer to take products of a certain producer and not products of another producer. So there is preferential treatment. Another factor is that we said there is perfect factor mobility. Factors of production are perfectly mobile. Factors of production can freely move from one industry to another industry. But there are some barriers to entry. There are some barriers to free mobility of factors of production. There is no perfect factor mobility. Well, students, I've said that in a perfect market, we are supposed to have free or perfect factor mobility, but factors of production are not perfectly mobile. There are barriers to factor mobility. I say the factors of production, land, labor, capital, they are not freely mobile from one industry to another industry. This makes this market to be imperfect. Another item that we need to be aware of, we said we have two market structures, perfect market and imperfect market. Take that we are through with a perfect market structure. We go to imperfect market structure. Under imperfect market structure, we said one of them is monopoly. Monopoly is one of the imperfect market structures, implies one seller. One firm, one producer of a commodity. So when in a market you have only one seller, one producer of a commodity, we say that market is a monopoly. A word which has been derived from two Greek words, mono implying one and polos meaning sellers. So one seller. Now, sometimes we take an example of Tanzania Electricity Producing Company as one of the kinds of the examples of monopoly. But later we'll come to know that absolute monopoly or pure monopoly does not exist. We need to know conditions for monopoly. For monopoly to exist, one, we need to have one seller, a single seller. You have only one producer, one supplier of a commodity in a market. Apart from having one seller, this one seller must be producing a commodity which has got no substitutes. So, no close substitutes. The commodity which is offered by the monopolist should have no other substitutes, no other commodities which can serve the same purpose. For a single seller to exist, there are barriers to entry. There be barriers to entry. Other new firms, other producers are not free to produce the commodity which is being produced by the monopolist. This monopolist is a price maker. The monopolist has the power to influence the price, has the power to dictate the price. The monopolist has the power to influence, dictate, determine the price of his or her products. You will find that in monopoly, where you have one firm, one producer, a firm is also an industry. Implying that the entire commodity, the whole commodity, is produced by one producer. An industry is formed by one firm. So we'll find that a firm is also an industry. But again, once you look at these conditions, you will find in reality, absolute monopoly, pure monopoly, does not exist. Absolute or pure monopoly does not exist. It's something that is unrealistic. I said if we take an example of TANESCO, what does it produce? Electricity. For what? Lighting. For heating. But one can cook without using electricity, can cook with kerosene or charcoal. One can use candle. One can use biogas. One can use, apart from biogas, we have the solar. So the sellers can be many. Sellers can be many, not one. Apart from having not one seller, commodities have close substitute. There is almost a close substitute for every commodity. There are close substitutes. There are close substitutes for almost all commodities. The barriers to entry can be removed. The barriers to entry can be removed, can be eliminated. Apart from elimination of the barriers, the power to make the price can be restricted. Sometimes the government can influence the price which is being fixed by the monopolists. Price control reduce the power of the monopolist to influence the price. So you find, we said in monopoly there is one seller, but the sellers can be many. We said that there are close substitutes. There are no close substitutes. On this side, we have close substitutes for almost every commodity. There are barriers to entry. These barriers can be eliminated. The monopolists are price makers. The power of the monopolist to influence the price can be removed through price control. After having analyzed that pure monopoly does not exist, we need to know factors which can contribute to the existence of monopoly. Which factors make monopoly exist? Factors which can lead to emergence of monopoly. This is the item that we need to know. Dear students, we proceed with our session with the factors which may lead to emergence of monopoly. factors contributing to the emergence of monopoly. Monopoly can result from either natural factors or artificial factors, man-made factors. One of the things that can lead to monopoly to occur is patent rights. Patent rights are legal rights which are granted to producers of certain commodities, be suppliers of their commodity for a given period of time. You produce a certain commodity and you have the right to on monopoly of that commodity. You have the artists, you have the musicians, you have authors of books. They have the patent rights for their goods. They are given legal rights. Another factor is government laws and regulations. I said the question of TANESCO as the sole supplier of electricity. The only institution which has the right to produce electricity and supply electricity to customers is TANESCO. Another factor which can lead to emergence of monopoly is high entry costs. High entry costs. This happens when you need a large amount of capital to establish or to start a production unit. For instance, TRC, Tanzania Railway Corporation, has the monopoly over railway transport simply because other firms are unable to produce or to offer that service. The capital to establish, to construct a railway line is very huge, such that a normal person cannot afford. Another factor is ownership of strategic raw materials. Strategic raw material or key raw material. That for a given production process, you are the only supplier of the raw material for the entire production process. For instance, in Tanzania, we have the Tanzanite. Found in Tanzania. And if you want to produce a commodity using Tanzanite, you will have to buy it, you will have to import it, you will have to buy it from Tanzania. Another factor which is a bit confusing is something called natural monopoly. By virtue of the word natural, some do take that natural monopoly is the same as ownership of a key natural resource. But natural monopoly happens when a firm enjoys economies of scale. enjoys economies of scale, which implies that you produce a certain commodity at a low cost as compared to other producers. So you will find that you are producing at minimum costs, sell at minimum price, such that the other rivals cannot afford to supply such a commodity at such low prices. We say this is natural monopoly. Another factor is government utilities. Government utilities like posts, like water supply. In case of Dar es Salaam, we have something called DAWASA, the sole supplier of water in Dar es Salaam. We have only one post corporation. That is government utilities. These are the factors which can lead to the emergence of monopoly. In addition, we have technological innovations. So if you have discovered a secret on producing a certain commodity, you remain with your secret in producing that commodity simply because you are the one who innovated such a technology. In addition to these factors which contribute to the emergence of monopoly, dear students, another thing that is related with monopoly is price discrimination. Price discrimination under monopoly. By price discrimination, we refer to the process of selling the same commodity to different buyers at different prices. You sell the same commodity to different buyers at different prices. For instance, we have TANESCO, which sells the same commodity, which is electricity, at different prices to different customers in the case of domestic producers, domestic users, and industrial users. You find in public transport, college students pay lower costs, lower rates, while adults pay higher costs. That is price discrimination. You find that the barber shops, they charge higher prices to the adults and charge lower prices for the same service to children. That's called price discrimination. You find even in music halls, men are charged higher prices while women are charged lower prices. That's called price discrimination. You find that there is price discrimination, as I said, with Tanesco, with the barber shops, and with the music or cinema halls. They charge different prices for the same commodity or for the same service to different customers, to different buyers. We need to know, under price discrimination, types of price discrimination. There are several kinds of price discrimination. You can have price discrimination according to income. For instance, you have the rich, you have the poor, but these are charged differently for operation by doctors. You have the surgeon, having known that this is rich and this is poor, the poor will be charged a lower rate while the rich will be charged a higher rate for the same kind of operation. This is one kind of price discrimination according to income. We need to continue with other types of price discrimination. Yeah, we still go on, my dear students, with the factors or the types of price discrimination. We said one is price discrimination according to income. The second, we have price discrimination according to location, or we call local price discrimination, where you sell the same commodity to different buyers in different locations. You have the same item, you have the same commodity, you have the same product, you sell maybe highly in the local market and you sell lowly in a foreign market. Local price discrimination. We have local price discrimination, where in a local market, in a domestic market, you sell the commodity at a high price, while in a foreign market, you sell the same commodity at a low cost or at a low price. We have price discrimination according to age, sex, and status. I said, for instance, in the barber shops, for haircuts, children are charged lower prices, while adults are charged higher prices. Either age or sex or status. You can have price discrimination according to time of service. price discrimination according to time of service. For instance, in certain music halls, rates change according to time. Is it night or daytime? So you find that during the night, the rates are high, and during the daytime, the rates are low. You can also have price discrimination according to trade or according to use. You can have price discrimination according to use or according to trade. We have, for instance, TANESCO. Sells, we have said, electricity. For domestic use, prices are high. The rates or prices are high for domestic use, but for industrial use, the rates are low. Maybe for the sake of encouraging production in the industries, TANESCO charges lower rates to the industrial users so as production can be increased. But I've said it can be according to trade. You have retail and wholesale. That if you buy a commodity on small quantities, you buy maybe charcoal in a tin, the rates are high. But if you are buying charcoal in a sack, or you buy a large quantity, you get a discount price. So you find that the price that you be charged will be low. So one who buys a small quantity is charged high prices, and the one who buys large quantities is charged low prices. So my dear students, our next lesson will be on the advantages and disadvantages of monopoly. We'll also look on how monopoly can be controlled, because in reality, monopoly has more disadvantages than advantages in a society. So, as I've said, in our next lesson, we'll look first on the advantages of monopoly, the disadvantages of monopoly, and then we look on how we can contain, how we can control monopoly, how we can limit monopoly. So, with these words, I would like to say goodbye to all my viewers and students. We meet next time. Thank you very much.